The number one skill for the ACT English test is probably not something you've really ever thought about before. You see, most people, when they think about the ACT English test, they think about commas, they might think about other punctuation like semicolons and em dashes, they might think about subject-verb agreement, they might think about the tense of a verb, past, present, or future, and other things like that. However, there is without a doubt one type of question that is the most asked across all ACT English tests. I would bet that there's not a single ACT English test that's been administered in the last 10 years in which this type of question was not the most asked. And until I started doing my own research into previously administered ACT tests so that I could write my own passages and my own kind of prep for my own students, I had never really seen this identified in other ACT books. And this question type or this material is a little bit hard to define. It's not as simple as commas or em dashes or some other thing like that. Instead, this is the best phrase that I've got to describe this kind of question. Properly placing sentences or phrases based on context. You see, unfortunately, I think too many students, they think, well, if I just kind of go from question to question, I can skip, other sentences and stuff that don't have questions in them. And if that were the case, I would teach that and I would shout it from the rooftops to all my students. However, like I'm saying here now, you need that kind of context, that paragraph level context to get the most asked question correct. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hop over to my iPad and show you a couple of examples of this so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. And yes, there is a way to practice this and I'm going to show you how. So here are 3 examples of this kind of a question of properly placing sentences, usually sometimes it's phrases, in the right spot or arranging sentences in the right way based on context. And context just means you have to understand the entire paragraph. And unfortunately, a lot of young people, they think, well, I can't possibly get better at this. These are the kinds of questions I'm just going to miss the most. But this is a skill that you can get better at. And I'm going to put a link below in the description of this video to my book, The ACT English System, which has practice passages entirely based on this one kind of question and reinforces this kind of question over and over again. So let's look at these 3 examples and figure out what the right answers are, huh? So the first paragraph says, in the year 2000, the coffee farmers had had enough. Each felt individually taken advantage of by middlemen who would barter the prices of their beans to international distributors. Under this new venture, the farmers would hire a representative who would negotiate the prices on their behalf. In this way, the representative worked for the farmers, not the other way around. And number 1 says, at this point, the author is considering adding the following true statement. In response, the farmers united and created their own joint business. Should the writer make this addition here? And one key, of course, to getting these questions correct is to obviously reread, especially the first sentence before and the second sentence after, with this potential sentence in its place. But in this case, we have a context clue that if you're reading carefully is going to help us understand if this sentence belongs or not. And that context clue is right here, where it says, under this new venture, the farmers. So there's some kind of venture that the farmers have created that should be referenced in the sentence before. But if you read the sentence before, it says each felt, that's referring to farmers, individually taken advantage of by middlemen who would barter the prices of their beans to international distributors. That sentence makes no mention of a new venture or anything like that. And so that is why, yes, this sentence does belong. We need it there to make sense of the paragraph. So that eliminates C and D. A says yes because it creates feelings of sympathy in the reader. That's not the purpose of this sentence. You might feel sympathetic based on the paragraph as a whole, but the purpose of the sentence is because it provides the context that's necessary. That's why the answer is B. It does create this logical transition to the next sentence that's necessary. Okay, number 2, let's read the paragraph. To this day, the status of the ivory-billed woodpecker remains a mystery. Some say that it has been spotted dozens of times. I, on the other hand, prefer a position somewhere in between. I believe my grandfather when he says that as a young man he spotted the bird, which today carries on indiscreetly as an endangered species. Others maintain that the bird is extinct. And the question says, for the sake of logic and cohesion, the best placement for sentence 5 would be where? Sentence 5 is this one. Others maintain that the bird is extinct. Now, again, we just need to go place that in there and kind of reread the sentences and see. But there are some context clues, again, kind of like number 1, that are going to help us to solve this question a little bit faster. Sentence 5 begins with the phrase, others maintain. And if you look back at sentence 2, it says, some say that it has been spotted dozens of times. Now that phrase, some say,
pairs really well with the phrase others say or others maintain. Like some say Alabama's going to the national championship this year. Others say they're not as good as they used to be. And so that gives me the clues that I need to place this sentence properly. It belongs after sentence 2. And if you reread all the sentences with sentence 5 in that position, you're going to see that makes the most sense. To this day, the status of the bird remains a mystery. Some say it's been spotted dozens of times. Others maintain it's extinct. I, on the other hand, prefer a position somewhere in between. Well, in between what? Well, what some people say and what others say. And that's why this sentence belongs at H, after sentence 2. Number 3. Given that all the following statements are true, which one if added here would most effectively introduce the topic of this paragraph? This is another extremely common ACT English question, and we have a paragraph here, obviously without an introductory sentence. So let's read the paragraph and then come back to the sentences and see which one would fit the best. Well, did you also know that in 1484, he asked John II, King of Portugal, to finance his voyage? For various reasons, John II denied Columbus twice. This forced him to seek funding from neighboring Spain. Well, we have a really good context clue in this paragraph as well that's going to help us find the right answer. And it's right here. Well, did you also know? Well, that tells me that the first sentence needs to say something like, did you know, or I bet you know, or something like that refers to what the reader knows. So let's see. Letter A says, you probably know that as the rhyme goes, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. That one seems like a contender because it fits what we just said about the reader knowing something. It's also in the proper person, which means this sentence right here that I'm underlining is in second person, meaning it's addressed to you. And so letter A is also addressed to you. So that fits well. B says, in the days of Christopher Columbus, most of Europe lived under a monarchy. Well, that doesn't address you. It doesn't address something you know. So it's not going to be B. C says, have you ever felt like a failure? And that's in the second person, but it doesn't have anything to do with what you know. So it's not C either. And D says, sailing seems timid and easy, but have you sailed across the open ocean? Okay, again, it's in the second person, but it doesn't address something you know. And for all those reasons, number 3 is A.
So there's a reason why in my book, The ACT English System, this ability or this skill is step 1. And the way my book works is step 1 is dedicated just to this idea. But as we go through step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6, and on, this main idea is reinforced. So we don't learn it and then table it and forget it. But because it's the most important, we have to practice it and practice it and practice it. And while we learn new things, still reinforce that most important thing. There's no point in learning, for example, how to use a semicolon in the right way or a colon or some other punctuation if you forget or don't keep in practice the most important type of ACT English question, and the second and third most important for that matter. So check out the ACT English System book on Amazon and get to work, because you can practice this and you can get better learning how to contextualize these paragraphs and place these sentences and phrases in the right place. Thanks a lot, and God bless.